So, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced when you've opened not just one, but two businesses?
The hair salon that I called home for like 16 plus years flooded during COVID. I got into photography, which Darryl kind of was a hobbyist, and that took off. So we both ended up becoming photographers. We were like, you know what, we can do this. So we decided to open a salon with just me. And I knew in our community that there used to be a retail store here that did like gift, and it was kind of like the hub of whatever you need, you could stop there. This is our idea. We want to open this brick and mortar. We don't have the money to put into buying wholesale, but if you give me your items, we'll sell them on consignment and help you out, and you can help us out. That's how the boutique got started, was just, a stubborn client of mine thought that we should just keep going, and it has continued to grow from there.
It's been a journey. It's been quite the journey.
Hello, and welcome back to the latest episode of Storefront Strategies. Now, I'm delighted to introduce Darryl and Chyanne to you, all the way from Canada, which is so much further. I think you're much further north than I am, which is really interesting. Doesn't normally happen that way. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. Now, one of the things that I like to start off with is getting some idea of your background and your business. So can you tell a little about yourselves and your business?
You bet. We'll try to make this quick because obviously with two of us, it can get a little long because Darryl and I definitely have different backgrounds. So for myself, I am a hairstylist by trade. So I've been in the customer service industry for over 20 years. I took a small break where I multitasked, and I managed a very large retail store that I had actually worked at whenever I was a teenager, did their buying for them and took care of all of their staff. And then I got into photography, which Darryl kind of was a hobbyist, and that took off. So we both ended up becoming photographers. And here we are today, with multiple businesses doing all of the things that I love wrapped up into one. And Darryl's background is actually quite different and quite unique for somebody that works in the retail industry. So I'll let him explain that because it's a little bit more complicated than mine.
Well, I just recently retired last June. I was working in the oil and gas industry for 20 some odd years. So I ran an operations manager, for a service company the last 10 years, kind of managing that side of the business. So the inner workings of that kind of gave me a lift when it comes to running our own business. So it's been a journey. It's been quite the journey.
Before that, you were in finance. You've
Well,
done
yeah, I mean, I
these.
have backgrounds of many different things, and I think you could probably apply to any of these skills that I've acquired over the years towards business. But primarily, being the operations manager of that oil field service company was the primary kind of big education for me. Managing people, 160 guys, multi-millions of dollars in terms of budgets and equipment. And so you can kind of, my tolerances are definitely a little bit differently than some other small businesses. So I think that kind of gives us a bit of an edge as a couple anyway.
I love the fact that Cheyenne's keeping you right.
He forgets, he's getting a little bit older.
I
So he
just,
forgets all of the things that he did when he
I
was
just
younger.
know that I talk a lot sometimes, and if I just try and keep it simple, and especially when someone's interested in what I have to say, it gets me fired up, and then I just keep talking, and it's horrible.
Absolutely the same. So what inspired you to start a brick and mortar business then?
So the location that we're in today is our first brick and mortar, and it started during COVID actually. So the hair salon that I called home for like 16 plus years flooded during COVID, and the girl decided not to reopen. So I was like, perfect. I'll retire from here. We're doing photography. Well, I was doing photography full time at that point. I was like, this will be good. And one of my clients was like, you are not retiring from hair. I'm going to find you a location. And she literally found us a location and was like, here you go. And so I went home and I said to Darryl, I was like, you know what? I'm like, there is a space that one of my clients are moving out of that is coming up for lease. He's going to give us a deal because, well, nobody could really run their businesses. And he was just happy that somebody wanted to take over the lease. We were like, you know what? We can do this. So we decided to open a salon with just me. And I knew in our community that there used to be a retail store here that did like gift, and it was kind of like the hub of whatever you need, you could stop there. And so we decided that we wanted to add retail into the salon because it was needed in our community. And at the time, no one was able to go to their markets and sell their goods, all of the people that were doing like their own little side gig. And luckily, because of all of my hair clients and our photography clients, we knew a lot of people that had all of this stuff that they had made just sitting in their homes. And so I phoned them and I was like, here, this is our idea. We want to open this brick and mortar. We don't have the money to put into buying wholesale, but if you give me your items, we'll sell them on consignment and help you out, and you can help us out. And that's how the boutique got started, was just, a stubborn client of mine thought that we should just keep going, and it has continued to grow from there. And
Well,
then,
one of the other things too is that we kind of did it as a trial. It was
Mhm.
kind of more of, okay, well, let's just dip our toe, as most entrepreneurs, kind of get into that mindset. And we ran it for about a year, and we found that everything was going great. Everything kind of flowed, and then we kind of had an opportunity with the store right beside us that actually they had to, like, this place was sitting empty and derelict for quite some time. So it was on the market, and we decided to purchase the building, and we renovated it. Then we kind of moved everything in. So now it's now an official home for us, and it kind of allowed us to set some roots within the community and turn one of the old derelict buildings that were on Main Street into something that people were happy to see, because we kept a lot of the facade, like the original kind of store back in the 40s, I think, or the 50s. So it's a lot of the older clientele really enjoyed it, and people stop in all the time telling us how nice it is. So it's always good
yes.
to hear.
And then our second brick and mortar, which is in a different province from us, my mom has worked at since it opened. Her and the lady that owned the business became really good friends. And one day we were all drinking wine together in wine country. And she had made a comment about she wasn't going to retire till my mom was ready to retire. And I looked at Darryl, and Darryl looked at me, and we said, well, when that day comes, think of us, because our goal is to be down here once our girls are graduated, and we want to be closer to mom. And so when you're ready to retire, you let us know. Well, she decided to retire a heck of a lot earlier than either one of us could have anticipated. And so a year and a half ago, she had FaceTimed me with my mom and had announced that she was going to retire. So panic set in, and then determination set in. And within like 4 months, we had bought the business from her. So that business has been in operation with us for just over a year now.
So, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced when you've opened not just one, but two businesses?
Well, that's a great question. I think that, opening the first store, we had some different challenges than we do on the second store. The second store was substantially easier. You kind of already understood some of the workflow and processes that you needed in place to be able to kind of open that and to move on that on a quicker kind of opportunities. And so basically the store here, in my opinion, when we first opened, the biggest challenge for me was cash flow. Because Cheyenne and I, we do very, very different things when it comes to our businesses. And, my kind of primary focus was, the cash flow, right? Bringing the money in, what's going out, and how, like, what kind of sustainability do we have? And then obviously take that and apply that to many other things to be able to scale your business and move on. So for me, the biggest challenge actually wasn't really significant in my opinion, because it was all about just kind of managing the money in and out and keeping the staff in line, if
It's
you will.
lying. You
I
make it
guess
sound like we're just like,
it's kind of more, I guess, more in terms of
your
like, well,
mother-in-law
we
is going to
can't,
watch this and be like,
yeah,
keep me in line.
we couldn't have too many staff because we wanted to run as lean as possible, especially in COVID. We had to run as lean as possible. So managing that and kind of going through that stuff, I found was probably the most difficult thing for that. Moving into the other business here, it's actually the same thing. It's the cash flow. Really understanding, especially with the budgets are substantially bigger with the new store. So, and we don't own that business, so that
The building, yeah.
the building lease kind
Yeah.
of stuff was something new to us.
Yeah, I think, yeah, exactly what Darryl said. Cash flow was the biggest thing. And we were lucky we had had a business before these businesses that we had tried to do, and really learned a lot from that one about just jumping 2 feet in and not being scared to take loans. Like the boutique, the one that we're in right now, we funded everything ourselves as we went because it was during COVID, and so it wasn't hard for us to pay for things. But like Darryl said, the second store is quite a bit bigger. So the cash flow we didn't personally have. So, we had to go and find the money for that. And then staff is right next to that one because our businesses are very much brand businesses and they are all, like us. We are very much our business. So finding staff that thinks like us, that wants to give the same level of customer service in any of our businesses that we do is very important. So we're lucky because we have my mom. So for the most part, she thinks fairly similar to me. And it's great because we have like that family feel. And then here in the boutique, just finding the right staff to be in here. And same with our photography team, people that think like us that will go out of their way to help our customers is difficult.
How do you find the people?
Well, we make friends with them and then we convince them to come and work with us.
Yeah, and I mean, with our photography, the staff is different than the people working in the boutique here, doing hair and working in retail in Osoyoos in BC is substantial too because it's a tourist town. It's an older, like the demographic is quite higher, a lot of retirees. So each area has its own challenge with regards to staff, and navigating through that is in my opinion, it's just more about patience.
Yeah,
And
I was going to say we
being
are
a
very
super-
slow to hire. Like that's something that both Darryl and
Yeah,
I believe in is
slow to hire, quick to fire.
Yeah.
Because for us, it's easy to hire 100 people, but not everybody has the ability to sit in front of somebody and say like, listen, you're not fitting in and you need to move on. And part of that with my experience, in the oil and gas industry, saying hi and goodbye within a week was a regular occurrence, if you will, because there's a lot of people that come in and you tell them what your expectation is. They give you a bunch of lip service, and then as soon as they leave your office, they're off doing something else. So for me to be able to, to get rid of staff in the oil and gas industry was easy. So not to say that we're doing that in this industry, but
we can definitely be a lot slower.
But the
to
tolerances
hire.
of like
Yeah.
being able to say like, listen, you cannot be giving a 40% discount to all your friends. Like it's not happening. And if you continue to do that, we're gonna have to like let you go. And in the meantime, you're going through the same, your process of HR, writing them up and having these difficult conversations became a lot easier.
Can you walk us through a typical day running your business and what some of the unique aspects of managing a location-based business compared to, say, an online business?
So I think Darryl's pretty good at explaining the different positions we are in within our business. So I don't know if you want to explain kind of your management.
Well, so we have an online component to our store in BC. So we can tell you exactly like some of the bigger issues. And so in terms of the roles between Chyanne and I guess I would be more of
you would be more of a manager. We had chatted about this, whereas
it's like an
I
operations manager rather than
I do the operations.
She's an operations manager, where she's running the operation on the day-to-day stuff. Where I'm kind of like I manage the business on a different level. Like I do a lot of the books. You're moving money around. You're kind of doing the HR stuff and payroll, and you're doing those other little things off to the side that don't directly correlate to sales on the floor. Where Chyanne is more of that operational manager. Where she's making sure the staff is obviously here on time and they have their schedule and we have product that they can use, and she's doing the intricate kind of day-to-day stuff, but also she has a really good grasp on the marketing side of things, specifically for both businesses. So she kind of wears two hats, where I kind of stick to my lane because I don't cut hair. I don't know much about retail, but I do know margins and I do know cash flow and I do know all that sorts of stuff. So I can put in my 2 cents when it's needed, and I just stay off to the side when I don't.
Yeah, I think for us, one of the unique things is because we are a couple in business together and we are together all of the time. Sometimes in the morning we'll joke, we'll take separate vehicles to work because we have different things to do at the end of the day. And I'll joke to Joe, I'll be like, oh, have a good day at work. I hope your boss isn't mean today or whatever, right? Or the next day he'll be like, oh, like I got to keep I got to keep that girl in check. She's spending way too much money. And sometimes we just kind of joke around like that. But we come to work in the morning and Darryl has his office. And like he said, he does all of the background, like all of the stuff that helps us run, whether it is for our online store, it is keeping our margins, it's budgets, it's paying bills. He's doing all of that. And then for me, I'm a little bit more of the face in our business where I am trying to do social media and doing try-ons and checking to see what is selling and interacting with our customers and even with our business that we're not at, that my mom runs for us, I'm often FaceTiming with my mom in the morning to do check-in on how things are going. Customers know when she's on her phone because if they walk in, she'll just split me and I can, say hi to people. And so we have a little bit of a unique situation because we're not in both of our businesses all the time, but we really try to be present every day for both locations.
Well, and when it comes to the online component, like the biggest difference is that there's no face
Yeah.
to your business. Like you're behind the scenes, and there's a lot of people who try to use their face. Like you can't really use your face on your website to really sell the product because there's the saying, right? Like, know, and love you, and all that sorts of stuff. So we use our social media to kind of gain some of that.
That feeling that you get from having a brick and mortar, which is why we love our brick and mortars, because we really love to be involved in our communities and interact with our customers. And so I think that's one thing that is definitely a benefit to having a brick and mortar is you can get that like, know, and trust factor a heck of a lot easier than running an online business.
That's kind of like customer service currency, right? Where online, the only way to gain some of that currency or that credibility or that income, if you will, is through your social media and being able to be the face of it. And there's some people that have faceless social medias, which I find it, that's a whole other ballgame that I'm not interested in kind of doing for us because we are the face and the currency of our business for sure.
Now, just from the conversation, I suspect that both of you are offering very high customer service, that actually customer service is really, really important to you and to your business. Can you share a memorable customer experience with me?
I have one, but it actually has nothing to do with our business. Basically, the whole reason why Darryl and I got into business. When we got married, I thought that planning a wedding was going to be sunshine, rainbows, and lollipops. And I love planning. I love organizing. And the level of customer service that I got from any wedding vendor in our area was very lackluster, necessarily bad. Some were bad. Some didn't even message us back. And I think from being behind the scenes with hair for so many years and listening to people tell me what kind of service they weren't getting, I just really paid attention to that, right? Like there was something missing in customer service. And so when we got married, we had a very lackluster experience. At one point in our wedding, Darryl looked at me and he's like, we could do this better. Like we could do this better. And that has kind of been our motto for everything that we do. When we opened the boutique with the salon, it's we can do this better. Like our motto is affordable, reliable, and professional. Like we want to make sure that you are getting great customer service, even though you're not paying the highest price in any industry that we're in. And so, yeah, customer service is very important to us.
Now, one of the interesting things I think with brick and mortar is sometimes you do absolutely have to roll with it, regardless of what happens. And you keep smiling and you stay professional and you deal with it. And it's only when you go behind closed doors that you kind of go, what the heck?
Yeah, you need to cry on the inside.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So I'd like to move on to marketing and marketing strategies. I'd love to know which strategies you've found most effective for actually driving foot traffic to your store.
Do you want me to take that one?
Well, I think that there's multiple different things. And so I'd like to hear your take on it.
I think ours just goes back to our good old fashioned customer service. And because we offer that, like we know you by name service, a lot of our customers come from referrals on any business that we do. So it's great because for me, the best advertising that you can have is when somebody actually takes the time to give you positive review, whether they're just talking to their friends, they do it on Google, they're tagging you on social media. And so our photography business is actually a really good example of this because we don't pay for advertising for our photography business. We haven't done it from the beginning. We have grown so much that we actually have a team of photographers and we refer out business to them. And then of course, like with the salon, when you're building hair clients. And so I just knew that kind of marketing from my background. And we've kind of implemented that into our retail business of, like tell your friends, get them to come. And then you just keep growing, right? Bring a girlfriend with you, come for a VIP shopping day, like that kind of thing.
I think from my perspective, you see a lot of the foot traffic and you see a lot of the repeat customers because through our through our website, we're able to see, those metrics. I'm able to see how many returning customers we have and you can see that number increase, the average order value. And so you're able to use some of these metrics to be able to put into your advertising. And primarily what I focus on, because this is my lane, I guess, if you will, do a lot of the Facebook marketing, and that's not necessarily the content creation, but the actual campaigns in itself. So being able to run multiple different campaigns or ads within a campaign with different artwork and or videos, and then you seeing the data that comes in off of that, and then making some adjustments and be able to continue on with it. So it's probably the most recent skill we've acquired because people look at these Facebook advertising and it's daunting. There's just so many layers and components to it that it just seems like, what, this is crazy. And so when I looked at trying to, understand it more, you start to see a lot of these videos on YouTube and they make it so complicated almost so that you have to call them to get them to do it for you. And they talk about sales funnels and all these other things. And as a small business, it's just like none of that matters. None of that matters. It's finding something that you when you put in front of the client that's relatable, and then they're able to actually use it to convert to a sale online. And by doing that is understanding that data. And I think that's where we teach a lot of our business mentoring because we also do that on the side. But the business mentoring side is we always tell people is like you need to know your numbers. You need to understand your data, understand the customers that are coming into the door. How much money do they make? Like what's their household income? All these sorts of things are a key component to the advertising side of it. And when you're
So you're
advertising,
attracting your ideal customer
yeah,
because there's no point in advertising, to the farmer, like a farming community, whenever you're selling,
hair products.
well, yeah, or bougie like handbags, like they're not going to use it. So Daryl's really good at analyzing kind of all of that data that we get coming in from social media, website, that kind of stuff to be able to draw people into the stores for us to be able to sell to our ideal clientele.
I love the fact you're data driven, that you actually look at what's going on and make the decisions. There's so many businesses aren't. So many businesses do the marketing by going, let's see what's going on. And of course,
Yeah,
that doesn't work.
and that's the thing. It's like we tell, like even between the two of us, sometimes you're throwing darts at a dartboard and just seeing what sticks. It's like that's not marketing. That's hoping and praying, and that's not a strategy. That's a result of your inability to understand.
I will say though, to his point of throwing a dart at a dartboard, because it can be really daunting if you're not a numbers person. I'm obviously the creative member of the team that numbers and all this kind of stuff isn't my thing. But what Daryl does whenever he does some of our campaigns is he'll be like, Shy, I need you to go and get me like a try on video. Tell me if you like this graphic. Cause again, he's got to make sure that it's like girly and towards our ideal clientele. And he'll just throw out like 4 or 5 campaigns so that he can get the analytics from those to see what is actually converting to views and sales. And so we have really learned in our business when Daryl uses videos from me that they convert better. And on top of that, we have also learned when we actually do personal videos, nothing to do with selling. When we do like travel videos, we'll tag items that I have on for people to be able to know that it comes from the store. But people like that converts. They like to watch us. They're getting to know us. And so those numbers I think are very important. So if you are a creative person and you don't like numbers, they are important, and find somebody that can help you understand them if they're just too scary for you.
I think you've come up with a great combination that you've got a creative and an analytical, and the two of you are a team. Because where one has a weakness, it's the other one's strength. So that is absolutely brilliant the way that you've put that together.
Sometimes it's oil and water, and most of the times it works out. So it's just like in a marriage, right? Sometimes it's a yes, ma'am, no, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Away
We
to go.
try to stay in our lanes as best as we can because we do know, that Darryl is definitely better on the number side and that I am a little bit more creative. But that doesn't mean that I don't value his opinion whenever it comes to a creative vision. We just might not always go with his creative vision.
That's so tactful. So what would you say have been some of the more difficult moments on your journey, and what did you learn from them?
Well, I'd say the most difficult component right now, through our journey was the very, very first business that we did. It was a $330,000 loss. You lost your hat, and it was a scary thing to get into. You thought it was a for sure. You know what I mean? Like all the data that we would take in, and people talking to us in terms of the needs and the wants for the type of business that we had started. Everybody wanted to use it, and it was great. However, it didn't pan out the way it was, because we had some things that we needed to learn, and we learned the hard way. So moving into the two businesses that we have, the first one obviously starting with the boutique here, the biggest struggle that we had was trying to get over the idea that the debt is bad, right? And debt is such a huge win for your business, within reason, obviously, because he's like we talked about, it's understanding your cash flow and really kind of honing in on some of your numbers. But debt is probably the biggest fear that most people have, and we had it too. And when we lost our shirt and we lost the whole everything, we recovered substantial, like super quick. And it was a hurdle that we thought that we would never climb out of. Like you lost $330,000. Like how are we ever going to come out from underneath this? And I think it took a year. It
Yeah.
was a year. And by then we figured out that, you know, this isn't that bad and it's not that scary. And now we utilize it to scale and to grow our business.
Yeah, it definitely helped us to learn to just do it. Just go for it. So when we got that phone call about the lady retiring like 4 years earlier than we had planned, it wasn't a we can't do this. It was how are we going to do this? And it was the same with the previous business. We had done everything right. The business would have worked. We learned a lot on like the legal side of things. And so now we hire lawyers, we make sure we have a good team to really kind of check over things, because we move so quickly. So with with the business, coming 4 years earlier, it was like, where are we going to find this money? Well, like Darryl said, it's not so bad. When you understand that you can make it through it, you just jump in. And so I think that hard lesson really became an asset for us, that now we're not scared to just jump. Just give it all you got. And if you do fail, it's okay. You'll bounce back. You'll make it work.
You're quite an incredible couple. I know people probably tell you this all the time, but you really are. What's the future plans for your business? You've got so much going on already. I think you're probably already super busy. I don't know how you find time to sleep.
You're opening up wounds like that have healed.
Our kids always joke, they're older now, but because they've grown up watching us do what we do. When we go on vacation, they always joke, did we buy a house? Did we buy a business? Did we because they know when we sit long enough, something manifests.
We have a saying, basically, it's when chaos in our life is when we're idle. Like when we're sitting idle, it's chaos for us, because we're always moving, we're always thinking about the next step or the next 10. And so when you're sitting on vacation and you're coffee in your hand and you're staring at the ocean, you're like, oh
You're just
wow,
dreaming.
this is super pretty. And then like 4 minutes later, it's like, okay, well, and then You just start going down these rabbit holes.
So I think ultimately we both agree that our long-term goal is to be able to have our businesses be able to run pretty much on their own so that we do have the freedom to enjoy life and travel and have them be evergreen so that they're just always moving. And we do want to scale. Darryl really wants a man business. He really just wants something for himself. And because we have really learned to just jump on opportunities that are good opportunities, we don't tend to like really plan out exactly what we want to do. So who knows, maybe a car wash or equipment rental business will come up for sale or we have that opportunity. So we have really learned for the future just to be very open to opportunity and sometimes not having a set plan is really good, but having goals is even better. And our goal is to scale and to be able to have businesses that give us the freedom to not have to be in them every day.
What advice would you give to someone thinking about starting their own brick and mortar business?
Well, for me, there's a saying that says, the best time to start a business was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. So for me, if I was to give anybody advice, or the biggest thing we can tell them is understand cash flow, understand what that means for you and your business, and never be afraid of debt. That's not the end of the world. Understand, and and we do this a lot with our mentorship side, is that we tell people you can really understand your business if you actually treated your personal life and your personal finances like a business, right? So you have your sources of income, which is your paychecks from your businesses or your employers, and your expenses is your household, and your business is actually the money coming in and how much money is going out, and being able to actually understand, where your money is actually going and how much actual cash you have left over. Because being liquid, or at least the ability to be liquid, will give you the opportunity to scale when the opportunity kind of comes up. So, but starting with your personal finances and being able to help understand what those look like, and how much money you actually are buying at Starbucks, instead of saying, well, I spend 30 or $40 a month and it ends up being 150 or 200. Well, that's a huge deal. So, and if you're willing to go and blow $100 at Starbucks every month, or $200 at Starbucks every month, leaving your cash inside your business might be a bit of a difficult thing for you. So there's some personal realizations that need to happen. But
Yeah, I think for me, making sure that your mental game is is good because people I think always have this grand idea that being a business owner is just,
oh, I get to go
vacations
to work anytime
and
I
yeah,
want.
and lax schedules and your 9 to 5 and everything's going to be great. And I think if people just before they start that business, just make sure that they really understand that it's going to be a good 3 to 5 years before you get the freedom to be able to live that kind of dream life. And I think that's why a lot of businesses don't make it is because they don't have the mental game of when it gets hard. Because when your staff calls in sick, you're the one that has to go in. And Darryl and I often work, 7 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. Like that's not abnormal for a business owner. And even when you have a brick and mortar, when the door closes at night, your business doesn't stop. And we have found a really good groove for us on balance. And I know a lot of people don't like the word balance. But for me, a scale doesn't have to be 50-50 to be balanced, right? Like there are days that, you have to move some pieces around to be able to find good balance in your life. And so that's why I think your mental game just really needs to be prepared that things are always going
Well,
to be
and
changing.
and this is the word that these buzzwords that these kids are using on social media. It was like, oh, the work-life balance and all the sorts of stuff. But like sometimes 110% for 2 days on your business is what's required
Yeah.
in order for you to have the home life, that balance that you're talking about. And for us, as an example, it's like, well, we know that we're going to go on vacation with our kids for camping for a week or whatever. Well, I guess I'm working at the store, and I'm doing payroll ahead of the time if I can. I'm trying to get inventory done, or you're trying to get some stuff done for taxes. And do you know what I mean? Working till 11 o'clock at night is what's required. That's the balance, is that you have to be willing to work without looking at the clock
Yeah.
in order for that to be successful. And you also have to be willing to lose some of your friends while you're doing that, because not everybody not
Understands.
everybody understands the fact that what's required to do what you do, and that's okay. Like they don't have to understand, but if they don't call you anymore to come over for supper or for dinner as often as they used to, you have to be okay with that. And sometimes you have to be the person that's making the phone call saying, "Hey, let's catch back up." And because they don't know, or they're too afraid to bother you because they always think that you're too busy.
Busy. Yeah.
And sometimes you just need to remind them that you are busy, but
Not too busy for friends.
you're not too busy for them. So hopefully that can help, you know, somebody not lose as many friends as they potentially would.
I think the thing that people don't understand about owning a business is the ebb and flow of it. So just recently, we did a merchandise stall for a music festival. Now, we only had 2.5 weeks notice to do this, which meant that we just all had to pull it out the bag. One of my staff members was off sick. Another one was moving house and was off. So we were like half staff, had to do the regular work and also prepare to do this music festival as well. But we did it by working 7 days a week, 14, 15-hour days, just for that 2-week period. And it was worth it. And it was hard work, and we're all very tired. But it was worth it because it was an opportunity that presented itself, and that might not have come round again.
Often people comment that Darryl and I are so busy, or they'll ask, are you keeping busy? And I always like to say we're as busy as we want to be for the most part. Sometimes when things get added in, like your event, you take on a little more than what you wanted. But I think that's where the mental game comes in, is you need to know what your threshold is for busy. And if you want to, go a little bit on the slower pace for your business, that's fine. You'll have a really slow grow, or maybe if you're going too slow, you won't make it. But it doesn't mean that you always have to be, 110%. But obviously, Darryl and I are a little bit of a go-getter couple, and we have a lot of businesses on the go. So sometimes we are a little bit busier than maybe we want to be, but it's going to set us up for the success and the goals that we want 5 years down the road.
So what's the number one thing that you wished you knew starting out that you know now?
I think not to be scared to fail. Again, that first business really, really taught us a lot. And I was always scared, like what, like if you lose everything, what happens? You just start over. Like really, you like, and we've all done it. When you're in your 20s, you are starting over because you're starting from the ground up, and it's really not as scary as you would think it would be. You just jump in, just go for it. Like Darryl said, now is the time to start the business.
For me, is just as understood. Like, yeah, don't be so afraid of jumping in with 2 feet. And it sounds so cliche, like, because it's like, you're not the one with $500,000 on the line and you got to jump both feet in. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that if you believe in your product and you believe in yourself, being able to put yourself in that position and to be vulnerable is okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. But having the ability inside to say, you know what, we're gonna do this, and whatever happens, it happens. I got to take accountability and take responsibility.
Yeah.
And as long as you're making good decisions, there should be no reason why you couldn't succeed.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
And like I said, willing to work without looking at the clock is one of those.
Yeah.
I think there's been so much wisdom packed into today's conversation. I'm so grateful to you both for coming on today. Where can our listeners find you and follow you?
Oh, geez.
I think the easiest place to find our home base is at our Don't Be Shy brand, and it's CHY. So Don't Be Shy, CHY. Whether if you just Google it, it'll bring up the photography and the boutique, which links them to like our business mentoring on Instagram. Our boutique page is kind of like our personal page. We share a lot of our behind the scenes. It's really easy to connect to us through there. But yeah, when you Google Don't Be Shy, CHY, pretty much everything comes up about us. We're not shy people. We're not super private. We tend to share a lot about our failures and our successes and our struggles. So, but yeah, and if anybody ever needs anything, just reach out to us, because we love helping people, because that's how we were able to get to where we are today, is from people helping us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you having us. Really do.